Hello there, my name is Stefan. I am one of our careers consultant team leaders at Queen Mary Careers and Enterprise, and I am here to talk to you about how to interview successfully in a very bite-sized manner. Here we go. Okay, so what would I be covering today? It's five main points, which includes how you can prepare for an interview, body language and presentation skills during an interview, and how you present yourself, how to answer specific questions and the types of questions you may get asked in an interview, how to ask questions too, making sure that it's a two-way process, and lastly, how to follow up your interview if you've not heard back from an employer. So how can you go about best preparing for an interview? Here's some kind of key steps that I would recommend that you consider. Making sure that you research the company in a variety of different ways, whether that includes looking at their website, whether that includes looking at their LinkedIn page and any kind of posts that they produce on LinkedIn and any other social media channels they may have, but also networking with anybody that potentially that works for that organization already, whether it's our very own Queen Mary alumni, to anybody who works in a similar role that you wish to apply to. It's obviously really worthwhile knowing your application, so reviewing it and understanding what you've already said to the employer. Making sure that you practice your interview answers, so booking in a practice interview appointment with the likes of myself or any other of my careers consultant colleagues. Preparing questions, we'll talk more detail about what kind of questions you can prepare to ask your interviewers and why. Making sure you dress appropriately, just as demonstrated here in the image that I've shown you. So to dress up smartly, and if in doubt, do dress up smart. To ensure that your environment, whether it's virtual, if it is virtual, then to make sure it is clean and tidy, or if not, like I have done in this recording, to blur my background as well. Body language and presentation, so how you present yourself. I've already touched upon a few aspects in the previous slide, but dress for success. If in doubt, dress smart. If in doubt, total top tip. Make sure not just to turn up on time, but actually to turn up early if you can. Test that technology out beforehand if you're interviewing remotely. Always keeping eye contact with the camera as naturally as you can. Personally, for me, it's really difficult to keep eye contact with the camera. It doesn't feel natural. I naturally want to gravitate towards looking at the person, the camera, rather than looking at directly my own camera. Mentioned this before, think about your background, think about the setting that you're in. Stay focused and visibly engaged. Don't slouch like this, because that doesn't show that visible engagedness that you have, and it is emphasized more when you're doing maybe an online interview, but also really important not to do that in a face-to-face interview as well. So what types of questions could you be asked? Several times whenever I've done this session in person, people don't necessarily know the names of the types of questions that they could be asked. So you could be given icebreaker questions to warm yourself up. But also there's several more here that are quite common, and I'll talk through which ones are the most common first. So motivational and behavioural competency-based questions are likely to be the most common. Motivational questions can include, why do you want to work for us? Why do you want to do this role? Why do you want to do this role with us? Behavioural and competency-based questions could include, like, tell me a time when you have collaborated successfully on a project. Give me an example of when you have done X, Y, Z. Tell me talk me through a situation where you have enabled others to achieve in a project. These are really like, listen to the beginning of the words, the tell me a time, give me an example, etc. Because these are really allow you to recognize that, oh, okay, that's a competency-based question. I need to give an example of a past experience of where I've demonstrated a specific skill. Strengths-based questions are becoming more and more popular with graduate employers. So the likes of EY, FDM Group are using strengths-based questioning. So there's no right or wrong answer to these types of questions, and they may include examples like, do you see yourself more as a specialist or a generalist? Do you prefer starting a task or completing and finishing a task? Those are very broad questions just to understand your ways of working or what your preferences are. There's more questions on there that I can go through, such as situational. Situational tasks are questions are trying to really get you to understand what kind of situations you will be in. So how would you deal with a difficult client? That could be a really significant and likely situation that you may face in the role. So they're really trying to get you to be thinking in the job already. Technical questions might be linked to specific coding skills you may have, or more commercial awareness, like specific industry type of questions. And as I've mentioned already, we'll talk about questions that you are going to ask the interviewer as well shortly. So in competency and behavioural based questions, this technique of STAR, or I prefer using the CAR technique, it just brings together situation and task into one, which is context or challenge. Think about this framework when you're giving your answers. Try and utilize this framework. Think about the context, the situation and the task that you are giving an example towards. That should be worth around 5 to 10% of your answer, let's say 10%. Action, all about the actions you did. How did you collaborate with other people? I actively listened to my peers. I asked them open-ended questions. I enforced X, Y, Z of what they said into what we did. It's all about what you did, how you listened and enabled other people. Actions are usually worth about 70% of your answer. So really focus in on what you did in this project to demonstrate the skills that they're looking for. So that example I gave was demonstrating teamwork, how I enabled others to shine, was what I was referring to there. The result, so that's about the outcome, what happened as a result. Did you get a certain grade in that assignment? Did you achieve a certain result for a client? Talk about that, and again, that's worth around 10% of your answer. Reflection and relevance. Reflection, what would you do differently? What was actually the really good things about what you did? Talk about that. It's really important to reflect on that and talk about the relevance. So how is this relevant to the organization? Can you utilize an end sentence such as, this potentially shows that I can do X, Y, Z responsibility. This shows my skill of X, Y, Z, which is needed to do X, Y, Z task in this role. That's the relevance part. That's showing the employer you really understand the role and that you really understand what it takes to be successful at the role and that you're going to be the person to be doing that. Okay, so that's really important, those aspects. And again, they can be worth around 10% of your answer, the reflection and the relevance. So moving on to what kind of questions you can ask. Here's some really good examples I would recommend utilizing or adapting depending on what you want to ask. You've got to personalize these questions. They are your opportunity to find out ultimately if this is the right employer and the right role for you. Finding out about training and development or progression if you're ambitious. Finding out about the work culture of the organization. Do they do a 9 to 5 and then clock off and go home? Or are they more of a work hard, play hard kind of organization? So you're interacting with your peers a lot, your colleagues a lot. Role specific questions as well. What are the day-to-day tell me more about the day-to-day responsibilities. What are the biggest priorities of this role? What are the expectations of the first 3 or 4 months that I would be in this role? What does success look like? Again, kind of role specific type of question. Also, just give a bit of context before asking a question. Show them that you've done a bit of research. I have watched this and it showed me this. Would there be an opportunity for me to contribute to that? There's some really helpful types of questions that you can ask. So organizational, role specific, training and development, progression, different types of categories that you can work out what kinds of questions you do want to ask. And here, following up, it's quite often you may not hear from an organization within the first week or two. So you can send them a polite email if you've not heard from them within the first week. But also be patient. They may have difficulty with deciding which candidate or which candidates to choose to be their next employees. So be mindful of that. And they may have other things on as well. They may be waiting for other candidates to interview as well. Also, when you're following up, please don't be afraid to ask for feedback if you're not successful. It's about you reflecting. It's about you understanding how to improve yourself and be continuously willing to learn. And definitely save your questions if you do get the role. Save your questions for when you've received that offer around benefits and salary. That's also really important. Just lastly, I just want to thank you for listening to this recording. I hope this is a really nice bite-size learning that you've received around how to be successful in your interview. And please do refer to any kind of resources that we do have to help you further. Thank you very much for your time.